This is GFree Radio. Here's your host, Peter Stewart.
So I've been broadcasting for over 20 years and been a celiac for nearly 10, so I feel as though I'm reasonably well placed to bring you the GFree Radio Show. Hello, I'm Peter Stewart. Welcome to episode 28. This week we take a longer look at the celiac scene in Canada with Lisa Cantkier, bring you news of the development of so-called coeliac-safe wheat and talk about a potential new diagnostic for the disease. We have a feature on a new Just Add Water bread mix. Join me in the GFree Radio kitchen and I'll show you how you can make a loaf at home with very little effort. Plus we look at the link between gluten and disrupted sleep patterns, and in our health section ask whether we're getting enough zinc and magnesium in our GFree diet. And Udis, already huge in America, recently launched in one supermarket in the UK a few weeks ago. We'll tell you which other UK stores they've got their eye on next. So first this week, let me bring you the news about the Washington State University researcher Dieter von Wettstein. Why is his name important at the moment? Well, he has said that he's got wheat lines where he's obtained a 76.4% reduction in the accumulation of the key gluten proteins. The next step, he says, is silencing the remaining percentage. The wheat project involves removing the gluten material that causes the adverse reaction in people who've got celiac disease. The National Institutes of Health and Washington State's Life Science Discovery Fund have provided the funding for von Wettstein's research. He's using a couple of strategies, one that would be genetically modified and one that would be non-genetically modified. You can read more about this via capitalpress.com, from where I've taken that little bit of information. And a potential new diagnostic for celiac disease. Available tests rely on measuring blood levels of circulating antibodies to gluten or biopsying the intestine. But anyone who's been on a gluten-free diet long enough will test completely normal, even if those individuals do have celiac disease. As we know, the tests won't show it unless they kickstart their autoimmunity by continuously eating gluten-containing food for 2 to 4 weeks. And of course, that's a real problem because then a new round of intestinal tissue damage occurs. Then it can be picked up, but of course, you have to go through the wars before that happens, and that's a lot to ask of anyone. Well, now a team led by Stanford immunologist Mark Davis, PhD, has laid the groundwork for a way to diagnose celiac disease in a much shorter time. Indeed, according to scopeblog.stanford.edu, they're talking about 6 days, and of course that means a much reduced gluten intake. The new study is published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and Mark Davis and his colleagues asked volunteers who previously been definitely diagnosed with celiac disease and have been on gluten-free diets for at least a month to eat 4 slices of white bread per day for 3 days in a row. Boy, oh boy. That's putting yourself on the line, isn't it? Then, using extremely sophisticated techniques pioneered in the lab, the investigators analysed several classes of circulating immune cells from volunteers' blood samples, and those analyses were able to detect gluten-focused, gutward-bound immune cells in the blood by day 6, much sooner than telltale antibodies would appear, and a whole lot less invasive, of course, than a gut biopsy. This might be a very easy diagnostic to use for celiac disease and more accurate than any out there now, according to Mark Davis, is the director of Stanford Institutes for Immunity, Transplantation and Infection, and he's expressed, quote, as you can imagine, special gratitude for these heroic volunteers who cheerfully agree to eat bread and experience discomfort to advance the science of their disease. Boy, oh boy, if you've got a cup of something near you, raise a glass to them, because they went through it, didn't they, on all of our behalfs. But that's quite interesting. They're calling it the best thing since sliced bread. Boom, boom. A potential new diagnostic for celiac disease. And you heard about it here on GFree Radio Show. I'm Peter Stewart. A little bit later on, well, you know, last week we talked about calcium in the diet. A little bit later on in this particular episode, we're going to be talking about zinc and magnesium and why it's important that, certainly for us celiacs, we keep up the intake of those particular nutrients and what they actually do in anyone's body and why they're particularly important for us. Also about celiac disease / gluten sensitivity and sleep disorders as well. So if you've been unable to sleep properly, got a few ideas on why that might be the case a little bit later on the GFree radio show. Okay, now last week we heard from Lisa Cantkier from glutenfreefind.com. Lisa told us an incredible story about her battle with life, really, and as she put it herself, how she nearly crossed the line when her little c was diagnosed as big C. I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions, but if you didn't catch the interview, I urge you to hear part 1 in last week's show. Well, this week we continue our conversation as Lisa tells me about living as a celiac in Canada.
I have many friends who have celiac disease that live in the U.S., and I network with many people who live gluten-free. There seems to be a lot of similarity between what's available in Canada and the U.S., so we're really not deprived here in Canada. We don't have as many food producers and manufacturers. However, we have access to all the, quite a number of the companies that are available in the U.S. So definitely no deprivation. It's much more common in mainstream restaurants to easily get a gluten-free menu. And in terms of shopping, almost all of the large grocery chains offer a gluten-free section, and there are many health food stores popping up all the time, some of which are completely dedicated gluten-free. There's lots of accessibility here, but with our new online store, glutenfreesmartstore.com, we're offering additional accessibility, particularly for people who live in more remote areas. I think we need more accessibility to healthy foods, and again, that's another reason why we wanted to launch the store.
So your site is glutenfreefind.com, and I was having a look at it a little bit earlier on, and one of the things that caught my eye was the children's programs and the camps and things, and I guess when you were growing up in the 80s, you couldn't go to those, but fortunately things are changing. And there are some dedicated gluten-free camps, certainly in the United States. Is that what's happening in Canada as well?
Yes, that's right. There are a couple in Canada as well. Probably over time we'll see more and more pop up as the need and the demand grows and continues to grow. But certainly when I was a child, that was definitely not an option for me whatsoever. So I couldn't go to overnight camp. And the day camps that I went to my family was very selective about where I would go. So my experience with summer camp is very different than children who didn't have food challenges or dietary restrictions.
And something we were talking about on the show recently was a breakfast cereal, which I understand comes out of Canada. It's advertised on your website. It's called Holy Crap breakfast cereal. As I say, it's on your site. I'm intrigued to know what is in Holy Crap breakfast cereal.
So these are the types of products that we really want people to learn about because they're healthy. They contain ingredients. Each ingredient in this cereal is nutritionally dense. So whereas so many people, especially children, are eating starchy carb cereals made in a box filled with additives, preservatives, and refined sugar, virtually no nutritional value. A cereal like Holy Crap cereal contains chia seeds and hemp hearts and dried fruit. So you're getting lots of vitamins, minerals, superfoods, antioxidants, protein. These are the types of products that we want to promote.
Now, Lisa, we first came into contact with each other because you tweeted me about the price of gluten-free food over here. And, Coeliac UK do a regular price comparison. They compare the like with like, glutened versus gluten-free food. And over here, it can certainly be, 4, 5, 6 times more expensive. Is it similar your side of the pond as well?
Yes, people with dietary restrictions and needs need to be accommodated. And I guess sometimes it's taken advantage of, and it definitely should not be. So this is something that the gluten-free community and celiacs need to continue to advocate for, is for fairness with respect to pricing.
Now over here we have the NHS to help with buying the more expensive gluten-free food. What's the situation in Canada?
It's somewhat similar to the U.S. So when citizens file their taxes, if they collect all of their receipts over the year for the gluten-free products that they've purchased, they can compile those receipts or have their tax specialist or accountant compile everything into a spreadsheet. And then numbers are determined with respect to what amount you have spent over the average cost of those combined products. And then the government will give you some tax relief.
So, Lisa, what is next for Lisa? Lisa, you've got 2 fantastic websites. You brought up a family. You're fighting fit. You mentioned earlier on about your feeling as though you want to spread the word. How do you continue your advocacy now?
Thank you. Well, I do. I'm a health and wellness writer, so I'm constantly researching and writing about new information that comes down the pipes, through research in the medical community and how it affects celiacs and those on a gluten-free diet. So I see my role as a writer and advocate combined, and I just want to continue to help people in every way I possibly can by spreading awareness, sharing information, answering questions, directing people to resources, such as nutritionists and health professionals, just really trying to help people with the different needs that they have as they navigate through finding their way as a member of the gluten-free community.
So let's finish with a couple of plugs. Where can people find you?
Certainly. Glutenfreefind.com can be found on Twitter at glutenfreefind, and Gluten Free Smart Store can be found on Twitter at GFree Smart Store.
And our thanks to Lisa for taking the time and trouble, first of all, to do that interview, but also that regular correspondence with me on Twitter, and also lots of retweets as well. Really appreciate your support, Lisa. Best wishes to you. Got another interview on the way, couple of interviews indeed. We're going to be speaking about that new bread mix, which you can get certainly in the United Kingdom. You can probably get it elsewhere around the world as well. Certainly it's in Scandinavian countries, but I'll tell you why I reckon you can have it posted to you a little bit later on. But first of all, let's bring you this about gluten and potential problems with your sleep if you are a celiac disease patient. Although little research has been done on the subject, there's a few bits of research which indicates the answer may be that there is a link between the two. I'm taking this from celiacdisease.about.com, which says, in diagnosed celiac, some researchers have hypothesized that the problem might involve nutrient deficiencies stemming from intestinal damage and villus atrophy. However, the one study looking specifically at the quality of sleep in people with celiac disease concluded that the problem doesn't seem to be nutritional status. People continue to have problems sleeping 6 years after starting the gluten-free diet, after any malnutrition from their intestinal damage has healed. Actually, I'm really pleased that I don't have a problem sleeping at all, and it must be really awful for those people who can't get to sleep or have interrupted sleep or wake up early, because that can really spoil your entire waking life, can't it? And of course your waking life is all that much longer as well. But potential problems then with sleep in people with gluten sensitivity, because gluten sensitivity doesn't seem to damage your intestines or cause malnutrition, although research hasn't quite determined what exact health risks gluten sensitivity is associated with, if any. Evidence from some medical studies indicates problems with insomnia and poor quality sleep plus problems with overwhelming fatigue and sleeping too much may affect celiacs most when they're first diagnosed. That's quite interesting, because one of my problems that prompted me to go to a doctor in the first place was complete and utter lethargy. You know, I'd be up at 7 o'clock in the morning, go to work, 9:30. I wanted to just curl up in a corner, and I could have slept for hours, believe me. That was the thing that prompted me to go to the GP. Some studies show that problems persist despite the gluten-free diet. In addition, none of the studies addresses problems with sleep faced by the non-celiac gluten sensitive. Well, for example, according to this report, one study considered fatigue as a determinant of health in patients with celiac disease, some of whom were on the gluten-free diet and some of whom were not. It found considerably worse fatigue in people who had been diagnosed but had not actually started the diet at that stage. However, a second study didn't find differences in fatigue levels between celiacs who eat gluten-free and those who don't. Another study compared newly diagnosed celiacs to those who'd been on the diet for at least a year and found improvements in sleep for the second group, but those differences did not reach statistical significance. Nonetheless, all celiacs had worse sleep quality than people without the condition, with higher incidences of abnormal sleep duration, sleep disturbances, use of sleep medications, and daytime dysfunction related to sleep. According to that study, sleep disorders are directly related to depression, anxiety, and fatigue in celiacs, and are inversely related to quality of life scale scores. However, the study concluded that celiacs could have sleep disorders regardless of whether they had diarrhea or other digestive celiac symptoms at diagnosis. In addition, sleep problems did not improve once the people adopted the gluten-free diet, even though most of their other celiac disease symptoms did improve. So, in conclusion, it hasn't been proven whether gluten ingestion plays a direct role in sleep problems for people with celiac disease or gluten sensitivity. Dr. Rodney Ford, a New Zealand paediatrician and author of The Gluten Syndrome, hypothesizes that gluten in your diet affects your brain and other neurological tissue directly, causing these symptoms, but there's no research showing that to be true. And that is again interesting, isn't it? Because we've reported here on the program in the past about a link between your gut, what you eat, the gluten sensitivity, to use that all-encompassing term, and neurological issues, whether it be autism or whether it be that brain fog. And if the gluten is turning on something in your brain that says you're tired when actually physically you're okay, you have that energy potentially, but you can't just get your head around, your brain around, activating your muscles and getting up and going, there could be something there, couldn't there? But apparently more research needs to be done. GFree Radio, that new bread in a few moments' time. And also why some eyes are going to be on Birmingham over the next few days. And also, if you're a fan of Udis in the United Kingdom, you'll know that they're in Tesco at the moment. We'll tell you where they're likely to be able to be bought in the next few months, in the next few minutes. First of all, if you suffer from either gluten intolerance or gluten sensitivity, it may be that you're actually deficient in certain trace minerals rather than allergic to wheat. This is another claim this week. Now, last week we talked about calcium. We're talking about a couple of other nutrients this week, courtesy of naturalnews.com. For example, zinc. Holistic nutrition therapist, clinical herbalist, and healing food chef Katie Bauer says many people with gluten intolerance and celiac disease suffer from severe malabsorption. I think we know that, which means they're not absorbing enough nutrients. Yeah, that was how it was explained to me in the very early days. Less than 10 milligrams per day of zinc, which is less than the amount required for good health. So few people reach the required levels of zinc, apparently, and that could be exacerbating or even directly causing gluten intolerance symptoms. Zinc, according to this report, is critical for the proper function of more than 100 enzymes in the body, including those that, if I had a drum, I'd roll it now, including those that regulate digestion. The body is a wonderful thing, isn't it? Everything interlinks so much. And zinc does things like it's responsible for wound healing, energy metabolism, again going back to that lethargic feeling we spoke about a few moments ago, hemoglobin production, carbon dioxide transport, and vitamin A metabolism. Zinc's important for male fertility. Heck, we've spoken before about fertility in men and women, and supports normal growth and development during pregnancy, childhood and adolescence. Zinc's also been scientifically shown to be a powerful healing agent for damaged mucosal lining. That's the thin membrane that protects the body from contamination during digestion. Have you got a light bulb above your head at the moment? Are things kind of adding up for you maybe in all of this? Many people with gluten issues suffer from damaged digestive tracts, for which supplementation could provide lasting improvement and even healing. Another common mineral deficiency that may play a role in gluten intolerance and sensitivity is magnesium, which is essential for healthy bones and the proper absorption and use of vitamin D by the body. It's also crucial for the health of muscles, the nervous system, the heart and the metabolic system as well. The report goes on to say, while it's definitely the case that many people with gluten issues actually are allergic to wheat, which in turn causes their bodies to absorb fewer minerals on top of an already mineral deficient diet, it may be the case for others that a mineral deficiency is the actual cause of gluten sensitivity. Again, I would say, if you're thinking of taking a zinc or a magnesium supplement, do consult your doctor first or speak to a nutritionist about getting the proper levels of those particular minerals in your diet, probably through healthy, natural means rather than popping a supplement. But it's all interesting stuff, and hopefully what we're trying to do here on the GFree radio show is just join up a few dots for you. Maybe it's just a dotted line between those dots, but it helps you have a better overall picture about the state of celiac disease research, the different products on the market, but also very, very importantly, the state of your own health and living G-free naturally. And I'm Peter Stewart. Thank you so much for listening, and a quick reminder that unlike some other sites that run interviews for celiacs or about living gluten-free, all the audio here is free and always will be. You can listen to all the interviews as often as you want just by digging down into our archive section. They're all available, always.
This is G-Free Radio.
Now, there are so many different breads on the market, aren't there? The ones in the stores, ones online, in the UK, ones only on prescription. There are also a few bread mixes, and this week I've been trying out one of them.
So you join me in the G-Free Radio kitchen and, let's pull the blind down, that's a little bit better, isn't it? And I'm about to try out this sunflower and pumpkin seed bread mix. This is from Sucrin. I was given this at the Allergy and Free From show in London back in June. I haven't actually tried it yet, so I thought now was a really good opportunity to do that. And it says, first of all, preheat the oven to gas mark 4 or 180C. Also in the instructions, put the bread mix into a bowl and add 300 millilitres of water. And this is a particularly interesting bread mix because there's very little work you actually have to do in it. It says on the back of the packet that there's no kneading, no proofing required. It includes own baking tray. And you may have heard there the baking tray that comes out. The packet here, the packet mix, quite fine. Tip it into the bowl. Certainly an awful lot of seeds, and when I tasted this bread at the show, I was particularly impressed with the amount of seeds that were in it. It actually had quite a lot of substance. Add 300 millilitres of water. Mix well and leave to rest for 3 minutes. So in the box comes a little silver foil tray. well, what, about 6 inches by about 3 inches, so there's not a huge amount to it. So obviously the loaf is going to be quite small. It says on the back, bread mix, sunflower and pumpkin seeds at last a delicious gluten-free bread mix with only 1 carb per slice and no compromise on taste and texture. Just add water, no kneading required. Ingredients, seeds and kernels, including psyllium, sunflower, sesame, pumpkin and flax, fibre from sugar beet, chicory and peas, fibre-fin-resistant cornstarch. I've not heard of fibre-fin, but that's a capital F and capital F in that, which is interesting. Whole eggs powder, pea protein sweetener, sucrin, mineral salt, raising agents, contains egg, sesame seeds and peas. So let's just give this a final quick proper mix. So mix well, leave to rest for 3 minutes. So start the clock and be back with you in a second. Average nutrition of baked bread per 100 grams is energy 145 kcals, protein 8.7 grams, carbs 2.5, sugar 0, fat 8.4, of which saturated fat 1.4, dietary fibre 21.2, sodium 0.4. And we're going to be hearing in a few minutes' time from somebody else who has cooked this. Friend of the show, Maria Brannigan. We've spoken to her before, in fact, at the Allergy Show in London back in June. Now, I say back in June, this was given to me. We did an interview with them that you're going to be hearing in a few moments' time as well. And this box of the bread is valid best before 2014, March 2014. I've not seen this anywhere else. It was actually produced in Norway. Got a little Norwegian flag on the top of the front of the box. When 3 minutes is up, pour into the enclosed foil tray, or for a firmer crust, place the mix directly onto a sheet of baking parchment. Bake for approximately, how long do you reckon? Because I've said that this baking tray is 6 inches by 3 inches by 1.5 inches high. It's not that big. You have got to bake for 1 hour 20 minutes on the bottom shelf of the oven. Now, I kind of haven't boxed particularly clever on this because I'm not cooking anything else at the same time. So even though the bread is free, it's going to cost me a fortune in the electricity for 1 hour and 20 minutes. That's quite a while, isn't it? When cool enough to handle, place the loaf on a rack, uncovered, to cool completely. The bread is best kept in a bag in the fridge. It can be enjoyed fresh or toasted. It can also be sliced and frozen, which I would have thought was pretty obvious, really. But OK, so the 3 minutes is up, and now we've got to spoon the mix into the foil tray. It's actually quite dry, actually. It certainly smells good. You can smell what I should imagine to be the sunflower seeds. You've got to be quite careful when you're putting it in, as I say, because it is quite dry, that I would imagine, well, it doesn't say it, you've almost got to push it down, because otherwise it's going to create its own corners and air pockets, isn't it, on the, where it just kind of sits in the bottom of the tray, but doesn't actually necessarily push down itself. Right, I think that's all of it. It's quite thick, it's quite heavy, actually, at this stage, so much so that it is sticking to the spoon. But let's get all of that off, even it out over the top. So now over to the oven. And onto the bottom shelf. Close that up. And now wait for 1 hour 20 minutes.
This is GFree Radio.
So it's been an hour and a half, and certainly I can smell the smell of freshly baked bread. 1 hour 20 minutes, in fact, is what they said. Let's open up, and there it is. It's looking good. It's suddenly risen about half an inch over the top of the tinfoil tray. What I need to do, when cool enough to handle, place the loaf on a rack, uncovered, to cool completely. It is looking good. So we're going to leave that to cool, and then we'll slice it up. Let's get out the knife and... The smell is pretty good, and I must say it is packed full of those various seeds, more so than I think any other bread that I have come across. No matter what it looks like, it's down to the taste test in the end. Bit of butter. Very naughty. So we're going to be speaking with Maria Brannigan in a few moments' time, who wrote a post about this sucrin bread not so long ago. That is good. Impressed with that. Very easy. Very little work to do. Plenty of seeds. Got a nice crunch to it. A lovely crust on the top as well. I think that's a bit of a winner.
I was incredibly impressed by it. Just loved everything about it, really. The texture, the taste. Just thought it was the best gluten-free bread that I think I'd tasted. It tasted like sort of proper homemade style bread rather than, you know, the sort of sliced shop-bought variety.
And what is nice is the seeds in it.
Pumpkin and sunflower seeds in there, which I particularly like, and I think they do give it a nice texture.
It's got a bit of a crunch, hasn't it? And something to actually chew on. And perhaps some people don't like a kind of chewy, crunchy bread, but certainly it appealed to me rather than the cloying mixture that you can sometimes get.
Quite agree. There can be some unpleasant experiences.
What are the downsides to this loaf?
Number one, the cost, because it is very expensive. It's £4.95 for the one pack, which makes a 500-gram loaf. And you have to keep the oven on for 80 minutes, which obviously adds to the cost of it. You know, if you can maybe do it so that you've got something else in the oven at the same time, then great. But it's quite a long time, really, 80 minutes in the oven.
I understand that you can actually buy larger bags. Is that right? So
that's right, yes. When I spoke to the people at Sucrin, they did say that if you order via themselves, you can reduce the price a bit by sort of getting kilo bags, and that sort of brings it down a little bit. But, I mean, I suppose it's very convenient because it comes with a little tin tray that you bake it in, and you literally just add water, mix it and put it in the oven. I mean, it couldn't be simpler, really.
And I'm thinking that if, for example, you were going away for a holiday, maybe, I don't know, abroad, you were driving to the south of France or whatever, it's going to take you a couple of days, you were doing self-catering, you didn't know where you were going to get some bread from when you arrive. Actually, to take something like this, which of course is not going to go off in transit, you're going to have an oven the other end, you could wake up on your first morning and have some freshly baked bread. That kind of circumstance would fit in really well with this kind of thing, wouldn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And it does feel a bit more like a treat, kind of a loaf, doesn't it? Rather than the sort of sliced loaves that you can get. It does feel like a sort of a nice weekend or holiday treat, as you say, and just very, very convenient.
And to hear a bit more about the brand, I caught up with Ashley from Sucrin.
We develop all our bread from our Norwegian nutritionist based in Norway, and we've launched it now into the UK. It's basically got no sugar, wheat, gluten, soya, yeast, but people love it. It's got all the seeds through it. It's all designed and based from our nutritionist base, so it's got a high fibre content. We use pumpkin seed and sunflower seed and kennel. Gives it a really nice texture, crunch, keeps it moist. Lasts in the fridge for 5 or 6 days, but freezes beautifully as well.
So that's the bread mix, and also I see here you've got a cake mix as well. That's obviously from the from the same suppliers.
We use an organic almond flour in this, which gives it a really good protein level. But once again, we don't use sugar. We use our all-natural alternative to sugar, the world's first ever brown alternative to sugar with 0 calories in it. Gluten-free's got a lot of sugar in normally. Ours hasn't got any, but it tastes beautiful. We mix the natural sugar we make from glucose extract, and then we add some stevia to it and a little bit of malt, and we come up with a all-encompassing alternative to brown sugar. The gold was entered this year into the Free From Awards and won highly commended. Considering no one had ever heard of us, that's quite a good feat, really. Our products in Scandinavia are household names. They've been out there for 6 or 7 years, and now we're bringing them to the UK. We sell our products through independent health stores, and we're also doing an online version where people can order online as well.
Follow us on Twitter. We're at GFree Radio.
You'll be familiar, I'm sure, with the name Udis, but how well do you reckon their sales are going? Well, they're owned by Boulder Brands, and in the United States, Boulder Brands have told foodnavigator-usa.com that the Udis brand has increased 74% year over year. That's their net sales. That is a huge growth, isn't it? And apparently a lot of it is down to, well, what do you think is the best-selling brand? What do you reckon is the kind of food, gluten-free, that is outperforming virtually every other sector? Okay, is it bread? Is it pizza? Is it pies? Is it rolls? Is it muffins and cakes? Is it biscuits/cookies? What do you reckon? Of those, what do you reckon is the biggest seller that is outperforming, that is stealing a march on everything, is just storming through the market? Actually, it kind of makes sense that it is the gluten-free pizza business that's performing extraordinarily well. And part of the reason behind that is because Boulder Brands / Udis supplying speciality chains, the burger chains, which very often do pizzas as well, the sports stadiums, which very often do pizzas. They're also providing them with the gluten-free buns for the hamburgers, and you can see how pizza kind of gets into every single market, can't you? Whether it be maybe a restaurant or a cafe, or whether it be somewhere that you go to like a sports stadium or a leisure park or something like that, or whether you buy the pizza yourself in the store and you bake it at home, whether or not it is topped. So it can be topped or not. You've got all the various flavours and toppings as well. So really is the pizza business that seems to be outperforming everything else. And this report by foodnavigator-usa.com also, well, it tells me something we probably knew already, but it's interesting to see it written down and go, oh yeah, I realise what they're doing. Most stores have 3 dedicated gluten-free sections. So think about your supermarket, your grocery store. They've got a 4 to 12 foot section in the ambient grocery aisles. So I guess we would call that the free-from aisle here in the UK very often. Half the full door in the frozen food aisle. Yeah, that's the same where I go shopping. It's not a huge range, actually. In fact, to be honest, I can't remember the last time I bought something frozen from the free-from aisle. And a frozen or shelf-stable rack in the bakery. Don't have a bakery section in ours. It's either just the general free-from aisle or it's the frozen. And food service represents one of the most exciting opportunities, and that is according to the person behind Udis, their CEO, Steve Hughes, / from Boulder Brands. We're starting at a pretty nice scale to our food service business. It's on a run rate of over $10 million, up from $4 million last year. We're in tests with Smashburger. Not heard of Smashburger at all, and I've travelled extensively in the United States. But of interest to people in the UK, elsewhere I guess across Europe and also in America as well, Boulder Brands looking at getting into TGI Fridays, which I know is over there, it's over here as well. In other words, they're looking at the big chains, not the really super large chains like the McDonald's and stuff. I guess that would be pretty difficult to break into. But they're talking about chains which have 300 to 400 units, like TGI Fridays. Meanwhile, progress is also being made in Canada and Europe, with 19 Udis products launching last month at Tesco's. We're off to an encouraging start. The product is quickly hitting the shelves in those stores in the United Kingdom, according to the CEO. So where do they go next? Okay. Well, in Tesco's already, and if you remember our interview with the managing director of Udis in the UK a couple of weeks back, he was saying, yeah, we're going to get into some other stores. We're going to be in some other supermarkets. We've got some names here now, according to the big cheese, the Grand Fromage in the United States. The CEO, Steve Hughes of Boulder Brands, actually says, we believe that Asda and Sainsbury's will come online early 2014. And if you're in Europe or if you holiday in France specifically, we're getting inquiries from the top French retailer Carrefour and other retailers in mainland Europe, but we want to go very carefully on it. We want to do it right. So look lively. Asda and Sainsbury's could be next on the Udis hit list. So watch out for those. And if that is going to mean another round of some bargains, some launch special offers, I reckon we're all up for that, don't you? Well, we're nearly done for this week's programme. Just a little bit of housekeeping to bring you. Good luck to our friends with the Coeliac UK Youth Group, because they've got a city break in the next couple of days, Friday the 22nd to Sunday the 24th, and it's going to be in Birmingham. That's for 16 to 30-year-olds, and there's going to be all sorts of things going on there. Great chance to meet other people, talk about gluten, and I think they've got some fun activities planned for all that as well. So hopefully that goes well. Would love to hear a report from one of those attendees in next week's programme. That'd be really interesting. If you're in the UK, the 101 Gluten-Free Christmas Recipes magazine is out. That features all sorts of recipes for Christmas, as you can imagine. We did a review of their magazine, their first edition of the magazine, about 3 or 4 months ago, which was really interesting. And also, if you're interested in some masterclasses, some cooking masterclasses, there's going to be a GFree cheesecake masterclass. That's quite specific, isn't it? In November. If you can't get on that, then I'm sure there are going to be other dates over the months and into 2014 via henskitchen.com. henskitchen.com. Don't forget, if you want to hear, or if you want me to tell other people so they can hear about what you've got going on, then don't forget to email me, gfreeradio@hotmail.com. So that's it. Thank you so much for the loan of your ears. Next week in the programme, we've got some more fantastic stuff lined up for you as we hear what it's like to be gluten-free in another part of the world. Now, we've spoken about Canada this week's programme. We've also heard about America, many people familiar with the state in the United Kingdom and Australia and perhaps in many parts of Europe as well. We are going next week to hear about what it's like being a celiac in the United Arab Emirates. Please join me as the GFree radio show continues next week. Just before we go, let me bring you this tweet of the week. It's from @celiacbaby, who wrote, "Met the mum of my son's friend at school today. She told me they buy Glutino Foods crackers because her son wants the same ones as my kid eats."
And that was the GFree Radio Show with Peter Stewart. And you. Thanks for listening. And remember, until next time, be good, be healthy, and be G-free.